Hello folks, welcome back to my channel and thanks for tuning in. If you have been following the news recently on the international stage, you might have noticed increasing anti-migration or anti-migration sentiments around the world really. It used to be localized, but now it is spread all over the world, starting from the United States on the southern border with the South America. I think there is what they call a migrant crisis there, which started with the states at the border, the Texas, etc., but now have spread inside states that generally aren't bordering South America, but that's a different story how they got there. But you can see that initially it was the Republican states, the DeSantis, the Abbotts that were crying and against immigration. You could remember Trump war story, and the Democratic states were in favor of immigration. In actual fact, they had what they call sanctuary cities. But at the moment, it looks like even those in the Republican or Democratic cities, New York, Chicago, are having issues with the mass migration and illegal immigration, as they call it. And the sentiment is going even in people who traditionally would support immigration or immigrants or didn't have any issue with that. Then you go into Europe, starting from the United Kingdom. It's not Europe, but sometimes I say just Europe. The United Kingdom, a lot of incidents in England, in Scotland, in Ireland recently, which exacerbate the sentiment against migrants, some being a religious crash or culture crash or other things. Then across in Germany, but mainly in Sweden at the moment, I think there is a growing sentiment against migrants, generally speaking. In France, I think there is a law that's going through legislation to make it harder to be a migrant in France. I don't have all the details, but I listen to the French radio now and then, and I've heard of that probably yesterday. That's quite a big one because that means it's legislated, it is a public issue. In some other places, just in the media, or the average normal right wing versus left wing, and doesn't make any difference. Or it's still in discussion among people. Like in Australia, New Zealand, we've got the same problem of migrants, of people blaming it, especially migrants, for the cost of living and particularly the cost of housing. But it's not in the public yet. There is no ministers claiming anything like that or campaigning against immigration or any legislation of that sort. But the sentiment is there. Now, to their defense, I think some of the sort of complaints have got validity to them. I mean, even in South Africa, when I was there, I don't know, 15 to 20 years ago, there was such a complaint where South Africans would complain that migrants from other African countries are stealing their jobs, in particular their jobs, but also would complain about some of them engaging in drugs and crime, or just making a better life than the locals and things like those. So there is that. The resources are limited for each country. So each individual person you add to the mix is going to need some housing, a job, or some amenities. Some come with children, schooling, health services, etc., etc. And one of the complaints that the resources are being directed to the migrants from the locals who need it and who think they deserve it. Probably rightly, they deserve it better than someone who just landed today. So, housing, jobs, but also culture and the religion. I mean, most people feel comfortable with their own kin. They can speak their own language. They can do the same jokes. They have the same festivals. They watch the same game. People generally are comfortable in those environments. So giving them a neighbor who listen to the different music, eat different food, celebrate different things, worship a different God, all of that could sort of add to social tension and this malaise among populations. But there's also some behaviors that are strange to Western cultures that migrants would import into those countries. The video I was watching recently was a group of Africans, I think from the Democratic Republic of Congo, in an open space, blasting music and dancing. Those who knows Congolese, who know Congolese, they know how loud they could be when they have got a party. And they're cooking in open air, eating their food with bare hands. And that for a Swedish sweet for someone of Switzerland, it could be quite a culture shock to see. That's a mad part of things. In other places, like in Melbourne, I remember there was a gangs of Sudanese breaking into homes and they're fighting on the streets. Here in London, Manchester, they still experience those sort of fighting on the street and knife stabbing each other. We don't have a lot of issues in New Zealand, to be honest. I haven't heard anything a particular group of migrants is doing. But let's face it, most of the countries in the West are quiet countries. They obey the law, they clean their street. And like now I'm walking around close to 9 o'clock on this street and it's just me. Look, it's just me. You wouldn't find this in many countries where just you're walking and it's nice and not clean because it's more of an industrial place here and commercial sort of buildings here. So, but still, it's just me. I'm not scared of anything coming off the bush there or anybody mugging me, although you have to be careful. I'm not saying I'm in heaven. But they are used to this sort of calm environment and a clean environment. So if you bring in somebody who kind of talk a bit louder, blast a bit more music, sometimes doesn't look after the environment as they do, there may be a bit of malaise among the population. So that's not saying that we should hate on migrants. It just means I'm just trying to be in their shoes and thinking that maybe we need to find better solutions. Assimilation, although some people don't like the word, I think it's one way. And assimilation doesn't really mean you have to do things the way everyone does it. It just means there has to be some standards of courtesy. What time should we play music until? In my country where I come from, we don't care about throwing rubbish on the street or in the bush. We can't continue with that in a different country, obviously. And other things, really. I think assimilation doesn't necessarily mean doing things the same thing as your neighbor, but having a certain level of standard, minimum of standards for people to cohabitate in their differences. Having said that, I do hope that it's not going to be a terrible experience. I do hope that there won't be any clashes between migrants and locals. I do hope that legislation will always be sympathetic to those who need to move, mainly refugees of war. I hope they will always have their doors open to go to safety. I do hope also that we will always be able to move around the countries for one reason or another, but also that we will learn to respect each other's culture and each other's environments, especially when we are guests. And that's one thing. And whenever I do travel, even for traveling purposes, and I'm going to a country, I attempt to learn how things are done and I try to respect those. It's different. Each country's got different sort of rules. Some of them are written, some of them are unwritten that you have to respect. I heard a guy in Thailand who got many years in prison because he criticized the king. So if you are a traveler or a visitor, a migrant, it's good to be aware of that. You're not allowed to criticize the king of Thailand. I had another guy in the Philippines who got a huge fine for possessing or consuming marijuana, which in other countries, many countries now is illegal. So it's good to know that if you go to the Philippines, you have to be careful to not be caught with the marijuana or any sort of drugs. In actual fact, he is lucky the former President Duterte isn't in power anymore. He was more rigorous when it comes to these things. But all in all, I'm saying, as a migrant, as a visitor, as a guest, it's always good to be always conscious of the culture, of the politics, of the socio-political landscape in which you are settling, and try to conform as much as you can and not rock the boat or upset the status quo. That's all I have to say today, guys. Thanks so much for watching. If you like my video, please like and share and subscribe to the channel. Have a good one. Bye.